Greetings, teachers. We are excited to start this learning journey with all of you on this occasion. Here, we as teachers will be empowered and guided towards making the upcoming months more engaging and collaborative. A couple of things that we would like to achieve by the end of 2025 and 26, quite simple as usual. We would like to create and enhance the English environment in each of our classrooms. How would we like to do this? By first promoting ETL practices in our classrooms and then enabling our learners to read and comprehend text in English. A couple of teacher level outcomes that we would like to achieve this year is that we would like in our learning cycles for all of you all as teacher participants to learn experiential teaching methods and adopt them in your classrooms. We also wish for all of us to develop a deepened and varied pedagogical understanding and be able to teach grammar, values, and language skills with strategic techniques. With respect to our students, a couple of things that we would like to achieve are that they have improved and confident use of English. And yes, we would also like to deepen their opportunities to enhance their language skills. And as a whole and as a school, we will be able to achieve English speaking environment in all of our classrooms. So, what are the objectives that we are about to achieve in today's module? They're quite simple and comprehensive, and they're divided into 4 parts. First is that we as teachers understand how easy experiential learning and teaching can be in our classrooms. 2, we would like to provide and support all of y'all with curated resources in order to make this effective and easy for you, where experiential teaching is both fun and accessible. Next, we will also be discussing how we can address our LSRW through strategies and specific approaches. Last but not the least, we will be addressing grade-specific learning outcomes directly taken from our NAS reports, where the low-achieving learning outcomes have been stressed upon so that we can achieve and perform them better the next time. So what are the outcomes of this module that we plan and foresee? We would like for all of us to actively participate and engage in each of the modules. We would like to enhance our subject matter and pedagogical understanding. We will also promise to use the experiential resources available through documents and on our Teachopia app. We will also implement experiential language teaching strategies in our classrooms after each of this module, and we will modify existing resources and create new and personalized resources according to the needs of each of our classroom. What are things that will be covered in today's session are the chapters that will be planned and that are planned in our DSCRT documents. Our academic calendar has the following chapters for grades 4, 5, 6, and 7. Activities for these chapters will be dealt in this module. Yes, there are quite a few DSCRT learning outcomes that we are asked to achieve for this year. And with this tremendous task ahead of us, what we would like to do is take a couple of these for each of our month and approach it with a pedagogical understanding. So this time we will be achieving the following learning outcomes for grades 4 and 5, where a few grammar elements, a few language skills will be addressed. And here is the learning outcome for grades 6 and 7.
Let's begin with the approach of this month. This month's approach is storytelling. What is storytelling approach? Storytelling is a teaching method where stories are used to make learning engaging and meaningful. What are the elements that we should keep in mind while adopting a storytelling approach? First, as teachers, we will have a clear objective, which will eventually be our learning objective for that particular class or activity. The story or the methodology and activities that we need to pick at this level will be simple and relatable, and the activities need to be interactive in their delivery. That is, we will use a range of gestures, voice modulation, pictures, props, or acting in this method to convey a particular learning objective. We will also conduct comprehension checks, which is simple questions to check if learners have understood what is being asked and the narrative that has been told. And we will also provide learners with the opportunities to retell the story or the narrative they have heard in their own words. Finally, we will have language practice tasks, which include follow-up activities to check if learners are able to adopt the language inputs they have received during the activities used in this approach. Finally, we will encourage expression, which is we will let learners respond creatively, adding an ending that they'd like, describing a character in their own words, or sharing events from their own lives that relate to the narrative or story that has been told. What are the different benefits we as teachers will get when we use this approach? Let's look at some of the benefits we will get by using the storytelling approach with regards to building FLN skills. Firstly, we will help to give learners a strong oral language foundation. This means learners will get an opportunity to strengthen their speaking, listening, reading, and writing skills, which storytelling builds naturally with children. Print awareness. Through interacting with different types of print and stories, children will understand how texts work, which is the way in which texts are written, that is from left to right or top to bottom, and the word and sentence boundaries that are inherent in language. Sequencing and logical thinking. While using storytelling approach, learners will be able to recall the order of the story, that is what comes first, then next, and so on. This also helps learners with early math and reasoning skills. Vocabulary and growth. Children who are exposed to stories are able to build vocabulary because they learn new words with meanings in context. Now, this is key to both literacy and comprehension. Next, let's see how the storytelling approach helps us build LSRW skills. Listening. When children listen to stories, they listen actively, and this helps in improving their comprehension as well as expanding their attention span. When it comes to speaking, helping children retell a story or role play in a story or act out scenes from a story help learners build fluency as well as confidence. Reading. Storybooks and written stories also help learners build reading habits and recall to vocabulary and therefore vocabulary recognition. Writing. When learners rewrite endings in a story, describe characters, or create new stories, this helps them practice sentence structure as well as expression in their writing. Now let's look at some benefits when it comes to teaching language concepts. Contextual learning. When learners learn grammar and vocabulary within the context of storytelling, they learn it naturally. For example, understanding past tense by hearing repeated storylines like she went to the market and so on. Repetition with meaning. Stories repeat sentence structures and words. Therefore, they reinforce language use. Concept illustration. The storytelling approach helps learners understand abstract ideas. For example, emotions like sadness or empathy, comparisons and cause and effects in the context of a story. And when this is explained in the context of a story, it becomes very easy for a learner to understand these ideas. Let's look at some of the strategies we can use while we adopt the storytelling approach in our classroom. Firstly, let's look at the different strategies under the engagement and exploratory strategy bracket. Under engagement and exploratory strategies, we have observation, which is asking learners to look. For example, when learners observe a picture or observe picture cards or story props, then asking learners to listen when they listen to a story read out loud. For example, asking learners to feel, that is, when it is used to explore a character's emotion or sensory descriptions in a story, and further notice, sense, or watch. These strategies encourage learners to pay attention to different details in the story, facial expressions, tone of voice, and so on. Now, these strategies are input and discovery based. So, you can use these strategies prior to a lesson or prior to introducing certain language structures or concepts to learners. Let's look at other engagement and exploratory strategies. Imagine. Now, imagine is another strategy that's at the heart of storytelling, because when it comes to storytelling, learners are required to visualize and imagine different characters, settings, and events. So, for example, visualize and envision. So, these strategies can be used when learners are listening to a story being read out. Pretend, create mentally. These strategies can be used when you are giving a role play scenario to the learners or when you're asking them to create a story of their own. Invent, dream. Now, creating alternate endings or new storylines, learners can be asked to invent new storylines or dream about what an alternate ending to a story can be. Ask. Now, this is used before, during, or after the storytelling to deepen understanding. So, question, wonder, investigate. You can ask these to learners about characters, motives, or what might happen next in the events of a story. Clarify and probe. This can happen when you're asking learners to retell a story or when you are checking for comprehension. Let's look at how these might look when you are doing an activity. So, for example, when you're conducting an activity at an easy level of learners which have a basic or below basic understanding of the language, you can say, look at the picture card. What do you see? Who is in a picture? When it comes to advanced learners, you can use instructions like, listen to the story and tell me what sounds you heard in the jungle. What did the lion look like? These are instructions that can be used in storytelling activities like picture talk, look and guess, story retell, and sound detectives. At an easy level, using the imagination strategy can sound like this. Close your eyes. Imagine you are flying on a cloud. What do you see below? For advanced level learners, you can use an instruction like this. Pretend you are a bird in a forest. Invent a short story about where you fly every day. You can use instructions like these and strategies like these in storytelling activities like close your eyes and see, magic carpet journey, if I were, or story recreation. Ask. These are strategies that can be used during and even after the activity that you have done. At an easy level or at a below and below basic level, sorry, at the easy level or at the basic and below basic level, the instruction can sound like this. What do you think will happen in the story? At the advanced level, it can sound like, why do you think the fox tricked the cow? Sorry. At the advanced level, it can sound like, why do you think the fox tricked the crow? Can we find out more about foxes in real life? Uses storytelling activities like, what happens next? Or story stop and think. Or why did that happen? Or ask and find out. Now, let's look at some expressive and demonstrative strategies. This can happen at the output phase or once you are done with the activity or during the activity as well. Let's look at some describe level strategies. These are essential when retelling stories or building imagery in a story. Narrate, illustrate, portray, characterize. So here, while using these strategies, learners describe the senses that they're using or the senses that are inherent in the story, the characters or the events of a story. Act. Now, storytelling often uses dramatization and role play, and therefore the strategy act is very important in storytelling approach. So here, role play, enact, impersonate, or mimic are some strategies we can use. With these strategies, learners act out the characters, demonstrate, physically represent. With these strategies, learners demonstrate what they understand or what is happening in the story through different objects or different gestures. Now let's look at some of the instructions that are um, sorry. Let's look at some of the instructions that we can use when it comes to the describe strategies. At an easy level, we will say, tell me what the boy in the story looks like. Is he kind or naughty? At the advanced level, we will say, draw the jungle from the story and describe what each animal is doing. Now, these strategies can be used in storytelling activities like character talk or describe and draw. When it comes to an easy level, you will say, you be the hungry lion and your friend can be the clever rabbit. The scene. At an advanced level, it can look something like this. In pairs, role play the king and the wise minister from the story. Use your own words. Now, these can be used in storytelling activities like act it out, role play, story skit, and so on. Now, let's look at some structural and organizational strategies. This can be used at the framework phase or when learners are understanding the structure and parts of a story. Beginning, middle, and end. This is the basic narrative structure taught through storytelling. What can we use in this particular strategy? Sequence, plan a narrative, organize sequence, plan a narrative, organize chronologically. This can be used while retelling a story or writing their own stories. Next, outline, develop a plot or chronology. This can be used for story mapping or storyboarding. At the structure level, here is what an easy instruction sounds like. Put these three pictures in order. What happened first, then next, and then last? Tell me. At the advanced level, this is what the instruction sounds like. Write 5 sentences about your morning using first, next, then, after that, and finally. So these can be used in storytelling activities like story puzzle, act it out, picture sequence talk, narrate your day, and story map. Let's Let's look at some activities using storytelling when it comes to FLN. Storytelling activities with an FLN focus. Number 1, act it out. Now, this activity can be used for grades 4 and 5. The strategy that this activity uses are listen and enact. The learning outcomes, or rather the FLN learning outcomes that we will cover in this activity, will be enacting different roles in short skits and responding to simple instructions and announcements made in the class. Learners will be able to acquire skills of listening and interpret and understand instructions through this activity. What are the materials required for this activity? You will just require your textbook and a story in the textbook, or you can pick out a story that you would like from the internet or from any other stores that is suitable for the activity in terms of giving instructions to the learners. Let's look at some of the steps we need to cover while following this activity. The first thing that you need to do is pick a chapter from the text and pick out simple actions that the character is doing. Let's take the example of the naughty onion. Now here we are looking at examples like picking up an object, opening a book, going to the corner, and so on. Here, as a teacher, I have underlined some actions that I want to teach my learners. Now, the next thing that we will do is call a learner or a group of learners and tell them what you want them to act out as you read the story. For example, Gopu, the naughty onion, and the other onions. Give each learner a character or a set of characters. Then instruct them to listen carefully as you read the story and act out particular actions when you mention them. Brief them as to what you expect them to do when you read these lines. Here, you can use your mother tongue or the mother tongue that is comfortable for the learners to translate and explain the actions if necessary. Before you begin, you can help learners understand the different parts of the sentence. For example, nouns and verbs, to help them understand when they should do the action or what the action word in the sentence is.
ನಾನು ದಿ ಅನಿಯನ್ಸ್ ವೆಂಟ್ ಟು ದ ಕಾರ್ನರ್ ಎಂದು ಹೇಳಿದಾಗ ನೀವು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೊಠಡಿಯ ಒಂದು ಮೂಲೆಗೆ ಹೋಗಿರಿ. ನಾನು ಗೋಪು ಸ್ಯಾಟ್ ಡೌನ್ ಎಂದು ಹೇಳಿದಾಗ ರಾಹುಲ್ ನೀನು ಕುಳಿತುಕೊಳ್ಳಬೇಕು.
As you read out the story, pause for lines you have picked out as actions and wait for learners to act them out. Do this with different sets of learners at least 2 to 3 times. Once learners are familiar with the lines and the actions, replace the character names with specific learners' names or class for group actions. Repeat this with different actions from the text and say them as you would give them general commands or instructions in the classroom. Practice these lines with the learners while giving them general classroom instructions during the day. As learners get familiar with the basic instructions, pick up more complex instructions in the same way and help them practice. Next, let's look at the activity My Life, a Story Chain for grades 6 and 7. The strategies that we can use in this particular story are listen, imagine, narrate, and connect. The excellent outcomes that are focused in this particular activity are speaking about objects, events in class, classroom environment, and outside surroundings, or responding to simple instructions and comments and announcements made in class. Learners will be able to acquire the ability to listen, speak about self and simple experiences. You will need a talking stick for this particular activity. Now, you can use any object available in your classroom, for example, a ruler, a football, a globe, anything that learners can pass around easily. First, start by asking learners different things that they did during the day. You can model this by giving them an example of your own and then wait for their responses.
Class, tell me, what are some of the things you did today? For example, I made idlis for breakfast.
I got the bus to school, miss. I plaited my sister's hair, miss. Once learners have responded with a few instances, tell the learners to sit in circles. If you have a big class, create groups of 7 or 8 learners and ask them to sit down in circles. Tell the learners you are going to create a story on an imaginary character. Here you can pick any imaginary character. We have picked a character named Chandu, the monkey, for example. Now, tell them you are going to start the story for them. Demonstrate what the rest of the learners should do in their own circles by doing this. Start the activity with one circle. Now, introduce the talking stick to them. Learners, whoever has the talking stick must add a line to Chandu's story and pass the talking stick to the next person. However, the lines they add must be based on the different activities they did during the day.
Class, this ball is our talking stick. I will start the story, and whoever has it in the circle has to add a line to the story. The next person will continue. However, what you add must be based on the different activities you did today. Let's start. I made idlis today. So I will say, Chandu the monkey woke up and made idlis for breakfast. Rahul, you said you caught the bus today, isn't it? You can add that to Chandu's story.
Then Chandu caught the bus to school.
Shilpa, you said you plaited your sister's hair, correct? You can add that as the next event in Chandu's story.
Then Chandu came home and plaited her sister's hair. Do this until every learner has had the chance to contribute one line to the story in their own circle. Repeat this for at least 2 to 3 times with different characters. Now, instruct learners that whoever has the ball must contribute 2 lines instead of 1 line. Once again, they must base it on whatever they have done during the day. Model this to them by giving them an example.
Chandu, the monkey, made idlis today. Then he packed everyone's tiffin box.
Then Chandu caught the bus and got down at school. He met all his friends from class. Increase the number of lines added to the story till each learner in a group has contributed at least 3 to 4 lines. Once they have, tell the learner that this time, whoever has the talking stick will talk about all the activities they did that day as themselves. Model this to them by giving them an example. Remember to assist them with English templates as and when required.
Today, I woke up and made idlis. Then I packed everyone's lunchbox and got ready. After that, I rode my scooter and came to school. You can tell me what you did in the same way. Today, I dash. And then I dash. After that, I dash.
Today, I woke up and gave my sister a bath, plaited her hair, and then I helped her get ready for school. After that, I got ready for school myself.
Good work!
This module is based on storytelling approach. Activities is based on the hard spots of the month, our tenses, and subject-verb agreement. Essay is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift, hence it's called the present. Let's focus on the hard spots of this month for this module. past continuous, present continuous, and future continuous tenses. Here is a video where you can watch about tenses. Introduction of tenses. What are tenses? And here you have simple past, past continuous, simple present, present continuous, simple future, and future continuous tenses with examples where you can teach your learners. Let's move on to storytelling activities. The first one is the mirror's magic, tenses, tales. This is for the grade 4 and 5, and the strategies are listen, ask, and imagine. And the outcomes are use nouns, verbs, adjectives, and prepositions in speech and writing. Writes a few words, short sentences in response to poems and stories or using picture clues. For grade 5, answers coherently in written or oral form to question in English based on day-to-day life experiences, unfamiliar story. And the learning objective for these outcomes are students will be able to identify, understand, and use verbs in the past, present, and future simple tenses by exploring a single story across different time frames. The first activity is the prose activity, which we have taken from the textbook, or else you can take it from newspapers, books, magazines, or any other source related to the storytelling approach. Step 1 is listen. Read The House of Mirrors aloud to the class. Tell students, listen carefully to the story. As I read, try to picture the happy dog and his actions. Pay attention to the words that tell us when things happened. Did they happen a long time ago, right now, or in the future? The purpose of this exercise or this activity is to deepen comprehension of past events by recalling what was listened to and identifying past tense verbs. Step 2 is ask and clarify. Now, let's think about what already happened in the story. Divide students into pairs. Tell them in your pairs, ask each other, what did the happy dog do? When did he arrive at the house? And what did he see there? After a few minutes, bring the class back together. Clarify that these actions are in the past. Ask students to name some of the words from the story that tell us about the past. For example, learned, decided, bounced, looked, found, smiled, left, and thought. The purpose here is to deepen comprehension of past events by recalling what was listened to and identifying the past tense verbs. Step 3 is to describe. Now let's imagine the happy dog is visiting the House of Mirrors right now. Split the class into small groups. Tell them in your groups, describe what the happy dog is doing as he enters the house and what he is seeing in the mirror. Narrate his experience using words that tell us what is happening at this very moment. Example is bouncing, is looking, is wagging, is smiling. These are in the present continuous tenses that are on the ongoing actions. Imagine future. So let's talk about future continuous tense. Let's think about the future. Imagine a brand new animal. Example, a playful monkey, a sleepy cat will visit the House of Mirrors next week. In your groups, invent what this new animal will do when it arrives, what it will see in the mirrors, and how it will feel. Plan a narrative for this visit, thinking about its beginning, middle, and end. Remember to use words like will or is going to talk about the future. Here the purpose is to extend by applying future tense verb creatively through imagination and narrative planning. The next step is to act and demonstrate. Now it is time to act. Each group should choose one part of the story to perform, either the happy dog's past visit, or his present visit, or your new animal's future visit. In your groups, role play or demonstrate the actions. As you act, try your best to use the correct tense for your chosen scene. Example: if you're acting out the past, say I bounced happily. For the present, I'm wagging my tail now. For the future, I will smile at the mirror. Here, the purpose is to deepen their understanding through kinesthetic engagement, linking actions to tenses by imagining the scene. Step 6 is reflect and categorize. Bring the whole class back together. Ask students, what did we learn today about words that tell us about the past, present, and future? On the board, create 3 columns: happened yesterday, happening now, will happen tomorrow. Ask students to categorize some of the verbs from the story or their own invented sentences into the correct column. For example, bounced goes under happened yesterday, is wagging under happening now, and will visit under will happen tomorrow. Here the purpose is to review and consolidate understanding of all 3 sentences, reinforcing the concept of time in verbs through description and categorization. Question to ask students. You can ask before or while during the activity. For the past tense, what did the happy dog do when he first learned about the house of mirrors? What did the happy dog Again, questions to ask students before or during the activity. For past tense, what did the happy dog do when he first learned about the house of mirrors? How did the happy dog feel after he left the house? For present, if the happy dog is visiting the house right now, what is he seeing? What is the dog's tail doing as he looks into the doorway? For future tense, what will the happy dog do the next time he visits the house? What will he think about the house of mirrors in the future? The next activity is Rainbow's Continuous Journey, that is for grade 6 and 7. The strategies are listen, describe, and imagine. The learning outcomes for grade 6 are use synonyms, antonyms appropriately, deduces word meanings from clues in context while reading a variety of text. For grade 7, use appropriate grammatical forms in communication, example noun, pronoun, verb, determiners, time and tense, passivation, adjective, adverb, etc. For grade 7, think critically and respond to questions based on text from books or other resources, events, characters, ideas, or themes. The learning objectives is students will be able to identify, understand, and use verbs in the continuous tenses to describe ongoing actions at different points in time inspired by the poem The Rainbow. The poem is taken from the textbook. Step 1 is observe and listen. Begin by showing a picture of a rainbow and identifying its colors. Then read the poem, The Rainbow, aloud. Tell students, listen carefully to the poem. As I read, try to picture the boats, ships, clouds, and the rainbow. What actions do you hear? Here the purpose is to engage students and provide initial input through a auditory observation of the poem's imaginary. Let's think about what's happening right now in the poem. Divide students into pairs. Tell them, in your pairs, describe what the boats, ships, and clouds are doing as the poem talks about them. For example, the boats are sailing in the rivers. Also, describe what the rainbow is doing. After a few minutes, bring the class back together and clarify that these are actions happening at this moment. Now, let's go back in time, split the class into small groups, tell them, before the rainbow appeared, what were the clouds doing? What were the rivers doing? Describe what you think was happening in the sky or on the water just before the beautiful rainbow arrived. Use phrases like the clouds were moving or the rain was falling. Here the purpose is to encourage students to apply past continuous tense to actions in progress at a past time. Let's look to the future. Tell them to imagine it's a sunny day next week and you see a rainbow. What will the clouds be doing? What will the boats be doing? Invent a short scene about what will be happening with the elements of the poem in the future. Plan a narrative for this future scene, thinking about its beginning, middle, and end using future continuous tense. For example, will be sailing, will be shining. Here, the purpose is to extend their learning by applying future continuous tense creatively through imagination and narrative planning. Time to act. Tell each group should choose a scene to perform, either the present continuous actions, boat sailing, clouds moving. The past continuous actions are rain falling, wind blowing, or your imagined future continuous scene. In your groups, role play or demonstrate these ongoing actions. Try to use the correct continuous tense for your chosen scene. Example, the boats are sailing, the rain was falling, the clouds will be moving. Bring the whole class back together as students. What did we learn today about words that show actions in progress at different times? On the board, create 3 columns. Was, were plus ing, that is past continuous, is, are plus ing, that is present continuous, and will be plus ing is future continuous. Ask students to categorize verbs from the poem or their own invented sentence into the correct column. For example, is sailing is present continuous tense. Were moving will be shining. For this module's hard spot is subject-verb agreement. What we know about subject-verb agreement: subject, who is doing; verb, what is happening; object, what are they doing. So here's a sentence: we is reading a book. So we is plural, and for plural we use we are reading a book. Here subject is children, verb is reading, and object is a book. Let's move on to the first activity for subject-verb agreement, that is the hopscotch style trill. It's for grade 4 and 5. The strategies are listen, identify, and act. Learning outcomes for grade 4: use nouns, verbs, adjectives, and prepositions in speech and writing. Writes a few words, short sentences in response to poems and stories or using picture clues. Response to simple instructions, announcements in English made in class or school. For grade 5, answers coherently in written or oral form to questions in English based on day-to-day life experiences, unfamiliar story. Grade 5 attempts creative writing. And the learning objectives for these outcomes are to help lower primary ESL learners internalize subject-verb agreement structure and through a guided story-based physical activity. Here, the prose is taken from the textbook, that is True Friendship. Instructions. This activity helps students understand subject-verb agreement using the story of Damon and Pythias. It combines listening, physical movement, and sentence building. The materials required are subject cards. Create a large card for the main subjects from the story, which is given in the picture. Verb cards, and designated areas is using mask tape, chalk, or hula loops on the floor to create two clear areas, subject spot where the current subject card will be placed and the verb card also will be placed. On the floor, clearly mark a subject spot and a verb choice zone next to it. Keep all subject and verb cards organized and ready for each scene. So here we have an example. King punishes Pythias. So let the student choose the right option from the two verbs given. Here the answer is King punishes Pythias. Start with a task from the warm-up. Task A. Who's your close friend? What is special about your friend? Share it with your partner. Then read the story True Friendship aloud. That is the task B. Tell students, listen carefully to the story of Damon and Pythias. Who are the main characters? What problems do they face? Here the purpose is to engage students and provide initial input connecting to the theme of friendship and introducing the narrative. Scene 1. King's Court. Here the sentence is the king is angry. He dash Pythias. Verb options are punish or punishes. So tell the learners, okay class, a subject for this sentence is king. Let's place the king card in the subject spot. Now look at these two verb cards, punished and punishes. I'll place them here in the verb choice zone. Student who can come and point to or pick up the correct verb that goes with king. Remember, the king is just one person. A student walks to the verb choice zone and picks up points to punishes. Ask the learner, why did you choose punishes? What's the rule when the subject is one, like the king? Guide them to explain that singular subjects often take verbs ending in yes. Now let's say the full sentence together. The king punishes Pythias. The purpose here is to introduce the subject-verb agreement rule through identification linking singular subjects to the S verbs. Scene 2. Damon waits. That is identify and match. The sentence is Damon dash for Pythias. Soldiers dash Damon. Here the verb options are four options. The first one is wait and waits, guard and guards. Next we have Damon. Let's put his card in the subject spot. Now look at wait and waits in the verb choice zone. Who can pick the correct verb for Damon? Student picks waits. Discuss the S rule again. Say the sentence. Now for our next part, the subject is soldiers. Let's put the soldiers card in the subject spot. And our verbs are guard and guards. Is soldiers one or many? Which verb goes with soldiers? Student picks guard. Discuss the rule. Plural subject usually do not take yes. Say the sentence. Purpose here is to reinforce the rule for both singular and plural subjects through physical action. After each scene, ask what did the king do? What did Damon do? Have students identify and retell mini sentences using correct subject-verb agreement. The king punishes Pythias or Damon waits for Pythias. This is a verbal step, no floor activity needed here. Let's remember our rule. When the subject is one person or thing, like king or Damon, the verb often ends with yes, like punishes, waits. Show me one finger for singular subjects. When the subject is many people or things like soldiers, the verb usually does not end with yes, like guard. Show me two fingers for plural subjects. Can anyone find other examples for the story which this rule applies? Now for the final scene, the sentence here is Pythias returns. Both friends dash. The verb options are argue, argues. Now for the final scene, our subject is both friends. Is both friends one or many? Let's put the both friends card in the subject spot. And a verb are argue and argues. Which one match both friends? Student picks argue. Discuss the plural rule. Say the sentence. Great job. Now let's think creatively. What happens next? Think of your own ending sentence for the story. Thinking about what Pythias or Damon does or says next. Tell the learners to make their own sentences using the correct subject-verb agreement. The next activity is Grammar Train. It's for grade 6 and 7. Strategies are listen, identify, and reflect. The learning outcomes for grade 6 are participates in activities like role play, group discussion, debate, poems, recitation, songs, jokes, riddles, tongue twisters, etc. For grade 7, uses appropriate grammatical forms in communication, example noun, pronoun, verb, determiners, time and tense, passivation, adjective, adverb, etc. Thinks critically and responds to questions based on text from books or other resources, events, characters, ideas, or themes. And the learning objectives is students will correctly identify and apply subject-verb agreement rules and then collaboratively build a narrative of environmental awareness and action, all within a dynamic train activity. Here we have taken the poem from the textbook. The poem title is Awareness. Instructions. This activity combines a grammar train game with collaboratively storytelling using the powerful message of the poem Awareness. Students will journey through stages of environmental awareness and action by correcting the subject-verb agreement errors and contributing to a shared narrative. Step 1. Setting the scene. Read the poem Awareness aloud to the class. Tell students, listen carefully to the poem. It describes important problems in our world like broken bottles and fumes. Today we are not just playing a game, we are embarking on a grammar train journey to create a story of change. Each correct grammar step moves our train forward, building a healthier planet. Let's become grammar guardians on this awareness story train. The purpose here is to engage students and set the narrative frame, connecting the poem's themes to the upcoming grammar journey. Explain the train track setup and game rules clearly. Our journey begins by understanding the challenges in our world. I will read sentences, some describing these problems. You need to identify if these sentences is grammatically correct or incorrect. If it is incorrect, tell me the right way to say it. Tell the learners, get it right, you move forward. Get it wrong, you move back. Here, the purpose is to initiate the core SVA practice, framing it as identifying the problems in their narrative and starting their journey. Continue the game. When a team lands on box 3, pause the game. Tell the team, congratulations, you have reached awareness awakens. Now reflect on a specific problem for the poem. Example, broken bottles or tossed papers. As a team creates and shares one sentence for a class story about what people are doing right now to help, use correct SVA. For example, people are recycling plastic bottles. We will write these sentences on the board to build a story of action. Resume the game. Now, some sentences I will read while describe ongoing efforts to fix a problem or new challenges we face. Tell the learners to continue to identify if each sentence is correct or incorrect, and correct if it needed. Every correct answer pushes our story train further towards a cleaner world. When a team lands on box 6, pause again. You have reached action takes root. Now reflect on a future hop for our environment. Together, add one sentence to our story about what will be happening in the future or what we will have achieved to make our environment better using correct SVA. For example, communities will be planting many trees. Let's see our story grows towards a sustainable future. Here, the purpose is to integrate collaborative storytelling, prompting students to reflect on future actions and apply future tenses to the shared narrative. As a closure, gather the class, read the complete class story they have built together, and have students individually reflect on the learning journey. What is one thing you will remember about subject-verb agreement from a story train? What is one positive action you can take for the environment based on a story and the poem? Continue the game till a team reaches the finish line. The two teams, you can name them one as Eco Warriors versus Green Guardians. Create a train track on the floor using tape, chalk, or large paper squares. Design it like a simple board game path with numbered boxes. Example start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and a finish box representing a sustainable future. You can draw a train at the end. Teams line up behind a marked start. Each team sends one player per round. Teacher reads one sentence at a time from the story. The student says correct or incorrect. If correct, student moves one box forward. If wrong, student moves one box back. And if they get the very first sentence wrong, they go out for that round. At the end of 6 rounds, the team with the most members near the train wins. Let's look at the activity. Here we have the train and one of the learners, when a teacher says one sentence and if it is incorrect and the students correct it, he keeps moving forward. But if the sentence is incorrect and the students doesn't seem to identify it, he will keep moving back and he will be out of the game. And the next player will keep moving forward if he or she says the answer correctly. And hence finish the sentences correctly. And one of each team may win the game. The next activity is Mystery Clock of Life. Here, the strategies are for grade 4, 5, 6, and 7. Listen, identify, and reflect. The learning outcomes are for grade 4. Uses nouns, verbs, adjectives, and prepositions in speech and writing. Writes a few words, short sentence in response to poems and stories or using picture clues. Response to simple instructions, announcement in English made in class or school. Grade 5 answers coherently in written or oral form to questions in English based on day-to-day life experiences. Unfamiliar story. Attempts creative writing. And the learning objective is student will understand and correct apply SVA rules by solving mystery sentences related to the poem, The Clock of Life. Collaboratively building a story and revealing a hidden picture. Here we have taken from the textbook the poem The Clock of Life. Instructions. This activity uses the poem The Clock of Life to tell a story about time, choices, and the importance of living well. Students will solve subject-verb agreement mysteries to reveal a hidden picture, making grammar learning a fun, visual, and narrative experience. The materials required are print or draw a grid similar to the sample image, which is given in the below slides with numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 arranged to form a picture. When colored, each student gets one. And color pencils or crayons, verb choice cards, and the sentence prompts. Strategies are listen, identify, and reflect. Begin by gathering students and telling them, today we are going on a special journey to discover the secret of Clock of Life. Listen carefully as I read this poem by Robert H. Smith. It tells us something very important about time and how we live. Read the poem aloud with expression. Then, introduce a mystery grid, handout, and colored pencils. This grid holds a secret picture, and we will reveal it by solving grammar mysteries together. Here, the purpose is to engage students through storytelling and introduce the central theme and the mystery activity. Explain the SVA rules simply. Remember, if the who or what, the subject, is one, the verb often ends with S, like the clock is. If it's many, the verb usually don't end like choices are. Now, I will read a sentence with a missing word. You need to identify the correct verb from our choices. Show the learners the verb cards that are am, is, where. Once you know the right verb, you will color all the boxes with its number on your grid. Here, the purpose is to introduce and practice SVA by having students identify the correct verb for each sentence, linking it to the coloring task. After each sentence is solved and colored, pause. Great job. Now let's reflect on what the sentence tells us about the clock of life or our action. How does this sentence fit into a story about living well? Use prompts like, what does a clock do? Example, the clock is always ticking. What are we doing today? Example, we are learning about time. Encourage students to share their thoughts, building a simple collaborative story on the board or chart paper. Here, the purpose is to integrate storytelling by prompting students to reflect on the meaning of each sentence and contribute to a shared narrative, applying the SVA rule in context. Continue reading all the sentences, having students identify the correct verbs and color their grids. Once all sentences are done, tell them, now look at your grids. What picture do you identify? The mystery is revealed. Celebrate the completed picture. Gather the class, read the collaborative story they built sentence by sentence. Then have students reflect on the poem's main message. The clock may soon be still. What does this mean for us? How can we live, love, and toil with a will, as the poem says? Which is one important lesson. The clock of life teaches us about how we use our time. Example sentences are given here. Let's go to the activity. Here's a grid that you can draw using all the materials required. The first sentence is the clock of life dash owned but once. The option is and or. So color all one boxes brown. So here you can see in the 4 grid are, am, is, where are differently colored. And if the first answer is, let's color it 1 brown color and simultaneously with the colors given in the boxes with the right answer. So let's look at the first answer. The clock of life dash owned but once. The clock of life is owned but once. The second sentence, our choices dash important every day. Your choices ends with yes. That's plural. So it is are. And are here in the grid is colored green. So let the learners color it green. Simultaneously, we have another 2 sentences. And once the learner finishes, the grid will look like this, a colorful grid. And now for grade 6 and 7 is the same activity. And the strategy is listen, identify, and reflect. Grade 6 participates in activities like role play, group discussion, debate, poems recitation, songs, jokes, riddles, tongue twisters, etc. Grade 7 uses appropriate grammatical forms in communication. Example, noun, pronoun, verb, determiners, time and tense, passivation, adjective, adverb, etc. Thinks critically and responds to questions based on text from books or other resources, events, characters, ideas, or themes. And the learning objectives. Student will critically identify and correct subject-verb agreement errors in sentences related to the poem The Clock of Life, applying SVA rules to reveal a hidden picture and reflect on the poem's themes. Here the same activity, but the sentences will be different for grade 6 and 7. Example, incorrect sentences with correct verb and coloring instructions. Here are 4 incorrect sentences for the higher level, and the students should correct the sentences. Here you can create more sentences following this pattern, linking a correct verb to a number or a color until all number boxes on the grid are colored. Here we have the activity template for all the grades 4, 5, 6 and 7. First we have activity name, the chapter name, Learning outcomes, objectives, materials required, steps for the activity, reflection questions, and daily life application. Now let's look into art in education. This is an art by Meera Mukherjee. Here, it's targeting easy, medium, and hard for the levels and target audience for FLN level, Kannada medium, English medium. And the learning outcomes for FLN level is attain basic proficiency like developing ability to express one's thoughts orally and in writing in a meaningful way in English language. It's for grade 1 to 5. And for Kannada medium, writes a few words, short sentence in response to poems and stories or using picture clues. It's for grade 4. An English medium responds verbally in writing in English to questions based on day-to-day life experiences, an article, story or poem heard or read. Here we have the strategy, look and label for FLN level. Attain basic proficiency like developing an ability to express one's thoughts orally and in writing in a meaningful way in English language. For the medium level, target audience is Kannada medium. Strategy is describe, writes a few words, short sentence in response to poems and stories or using picture clues. The level is hard, target audience is English medium. Strategy sequence, responds verbally in writing in English to questions based on day-to-day life experiences, an article, story or poem heard or read. Activity name, say it like you see it. The steps are introduce the painting and the artist to the students. Invite students to take a close look at the painting for 6 minutes. There are objects that are marked that need to be labeled. Collect the students' answers. No answer is right or wrong. Appreciate all the answers. So this is the map given. Ask the learners to identify and ask them to name what they have identified in this map. Activity name, I see it this way. Introduce the painting and the artist to the students. Invite students to take a close look at the painting for approximately 6 minutes. Take them through the given descriptions. Now instruct the students to put the descriptions in order of occurrence. No answer is right or wrong. Appreciate all answers. Encourage the students to be creative. Ask them to write what they have seen it in their way. The next activity, tell me a tale. Introduce the painting and the artist to the students. Invite students to take a close look at the painting. Discuss the students' observations. No answer is right or wrong. Appreciate all answers. Now instruct the students to describe the painting. Make a note of the descriptions. Put these instructions in the order of their occurrence. Create a story out of the descriptions. You may use the template provided. Encourage the students to be creative. So the template here in the beginning and then at the end. Happy learning!